oil is the topic of our town square as well today, and it's, in this case, about sniffing out the trouble along the Gulf Coast to try to keep the food that hits your plate safe. The nose, yes, the one on your face, or on these professionals' faces, is proving to be one of the most effective ways, no joke, to make sure that the seafood coming out of the water isn't contaminated with oil. To that end, more than 4 dozen inspectors, you can see it here, are on the job inside a Mississippi lab with more in training. They handle everything from red snapper to raw shrimp, smelling it in an effort to keep the food safe. Bill Mahan is one of those inspectors with the University of Florida, and he's live with us today via Skype. Professor, a pleasure to see you. What are you smelling for?
Well, we're smelling for any taint of oil that's associated with the oil spill. They actually had samples from the oil spill to train us with.
And are you comparing what known untainted fish of some kind from a different location to known tainted fish? In other words, the teaching process for a sniffer, how does the educational curve work?
Well, we don't have any tainted fish at this point, so everything we had was set up in the laboratory to be very specific strengths. So we had controls that had no exposure to oil in the lab, and then we had samples that were at 10 parts per million, 20 parts per million, and 40 parts per million.
And let's start with the smallest dosage, 10 parts per million of oil on a piece of redfish or red snapper or whatever it may be. Can you smell the difference if you're trained to know what it would smell like? And could you train somebody like a layman like myself to do the same?
Well, it would be possible. It really depends on how good your sniffer is. And that was part of what the training was, because in my job, I don't routinely go out and, say, sniff fish, but I routinely work with the seafood industry. And so they asked me to be there to sort of be an added flagger if any tainted fish starts showing up, that myself or any of the other seafood inspectors or public health officials could get out there and identify tainted samples that may need to be sent to a laboratory, which is costly. So they decided using our noses is a much cheaper way to identify potentially tainted product that would need further testing that would probably cost $700 to $1,000.
But now, with all due respect, are we in a situation where we're trying to save money by deferring to everybody's nose? And is the nose really the best way to do this, or is it just a cheap way to do it that may or may not actually be effective?
Oh, I wouldn't say it's a cheap way that they have. I mean, myself, this is a new area for me. They have full-time, I'll say, professional sensory inspectors that are already out in the field doing the sampling, and what the training program is doing is adding some folks to just get some added nose out there, as I said, just to flag samples and notify, say, the professional sniffers that come in. And what they would do is recheck the sample, and if it was very faint, then they would follow very specific steps. The next one would be to cook the product to try to get the volatile chemicals airborne. And again, if they suspected there was more oil, then they could eat it.
Yep. I got it. Listen.
So that's sort of the final test from the inspectors.
Understood. That's a high threshold at the end, I suppose. It's Professor, a pleasure. Thanks for it's sort of entertaining and at the same time, I suspect, incredibly valuable and important. Thank you for educating me and the rest of us as to what it is that you guys are doing to try to keep the food supply safe in the wake of this disaster. Thank you, Professor.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yep.